Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished and experienced sales professional and an author from Sacramento, California, Luis Baez. Luis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's an honor to be here. I
Thank,
appreciate you.
thank you. Luis is a sales coach and a trainer, and he's committed to teach impassioned business owners how to scale their revenues and impact by creating high-end offers. He has worked for LinkedIn, Google, Uber, Tesla, and many more, all the blue chip companies in the world, probably. And he's a published author. So, Luis, my first question to you, tell me a little bit about your own journey and what was the inspiration to pivot from corporate roles to teaching business owners?
That's an excellent question. And so I like to say that entrepreneurship for me was accidental entirely.
Hmm.
I was working in enterprise sales. I had reached so I came up through the sales sort of rank in tech, starting with smaller accounts and eventually ending up in enterprise sales, working on multi-million dollar deals. And that was when I stepped into my role at Google, for which I was recruited.
Hmm.
And at that time, I had built a reputation for being that person who was able to leverage LinkedIn to get recruited by these big companies. And so I started getting taps on my shoulder. Hey, Luis, how do you do that? And
Hmm.
as I got busier and busier, I flipped the coin and I said, I'm going to start charging for this time because I'm getting a lot of taps on my shoulder.
Right.
Eventually, I started getting taps. Luis, how do you run a business on the side while working
Hmm.
full time?
Hmm.
Well, I'm going to coach you up on that. And when I continued in my sales career, I reached sales leadership and I reached the director level. And I just kind of had a moment where I said, I thought that my path was to be chief revenue officer, and that's certainly the path I was pursuing. But I realized that what really lit me up was working with people, high
Hmm.
performers, really committed individuals who were very focused on attaining their own ambition and stepping into the role of coaching them and building businesses that make impact and create jobs.
Wow. What an amazing journey. I wish I'd met you many years ago and I would have come and tapped you on your shoulder as well. But Louis, my next question is, how has your experience in Silicon Valley shaped your approach to revenue growth and sales strategies? Because in Silicon Valley, not only are there huge opportunities, but there's a huge amount of competition as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I think what I've been conditioned to do is, there's a reputation for B2B tech sales to be very sharky. I am quite the opposite. I'm very human in the way that I approach the engagement with the customer.
Mhm.
I am authentic in the way that I lean in and show up. And I am very focused on delivering narrative that's infused and informed by data.
Mhm.
And so that's what Silicon Valley really conditioned me to do is learning how to use numbers to
Mhm.
then enhance the way that I deliver information to people and size up the opportunity or the return on investment or the cost of inaction. And in addition to that, my work ethic is really that of an intrapreneur, meaning that before I became an entrepreneur, I already was wearing the hat of building a business,
Mhm.
owning all the results all the way through to the end,
Mhm.
being that communicator and collaborator across multiple teams. And I think that, I grew up came up, excuse me, in an environment in my career where I was given permission to step outside of my swim lane.
Mhm.
You are an account executive, but if there is a fire to your left, if there is a fire to your right, you pick up the hose and you put it out.
Correct. Great response. And what exactly constitutes a high-end offer? And how does it differ from other offerings in the market?
Yeah. When I think of service providers, coaches, and consultants and personal brands who are stepping into the space,
Mm,
there's an inclination of giving their time away for free to get
mm,
started, or charging per hour or doing one-off sessions because they're concerned about the customer's willingness to pay.
Hmm.
When we talk about high-end offers, we are in a very different mindset. We're committed to the client's transformation
Hmm.
at all costs,
Right.
all in, right? And what we're focused on instead is not being the band-aid solution, but offering the entire total framework or system so that they have a sustainable, lasting outcome, not
Hmm.
just a quick one.
Hmm.
And what that means is that you show up differently than the conversation. It's no longer a focus on buy now, do now. It's really more of a relationship that you're developing with the person,
Hmm.
getting to understand what is it that's really motivating them to take action on whatever pain or
Right.
whatever frustration they're going through, and then writing a complete and holistic prescription for that
Hmm.
pain.
Very well said, Louis. And therefore, my follow-up question is why should business owners focus on high-end offers when scaling their revenue? And give me an example if you can.
Yes, great, great, great. So, a lot of the people that I connect with have an aspiration of building businesses that attain six and seven figures in revenues.
Correct.
And so, as we're getting started, and let's just approach the first six figures, let's cap this at 100,000, right? When you think about how to crack that egg, there's certainly more than one way.
Hmm.
You can serve 20 people at $5,000,
Hmm.
right? Or you can serve five people at 20,000.
Correct.
And so when you think about cognitively and energetically and emotionally, the motions of selling, whether you're selling something at 200 or whether you're selling something at 20,000, it requires the same of you. And so when you're focused on transformation and you're also focused on giving your business oxygen, where you're not clinging to small deals or small, contracts over and over, it really radically changes the way that you show up. And it also, again, focuses on bigger potential transformation for the client. So it's actually a win-win for everyone. You, as a business owner, are
Mhm.
seeing dependable, consistent, fluid sort of revenues, right? But the person is experiencing transformation as opposed to a quick fix.
And what steps would you recommend for business owners to design a compelling high-end offer?
Hmm. I would say that think about the totality of the problem, right? When I think of stepping into a business
Hmm.
and the first thing is they've got a problem or they've got something that is really top of mind for them.
Hmm.
As I do a sort of analysis of what's going on, I start to uncover the real root cause of
Hmm.
the problem.
Hmm.
And so think about a sort of diagnostic component to your approach or an assessment or an analysis that helps you better inform the client
Hmm.
about what the real root of the problem is, such that when you introduce the solution, it is better received. So then the next phase or the next component of the solution, this is a full framework. Give me phases. Phase one, we're doing the analysis. Phase two, we're applying the data. Phase three, we're building the assets. Phase four, we're testing. Phase five is launch. And then the final phase is analysis and measurement of results.
Hmm.
When you can paint that very clear path and articulate that for a client, right? Not only are you doing them a favor and sort of like surfacing and helping them acknowledge that pain, but you're also making the results tangible. The possibility of a future state without that problem is suddenly on the horizon and available to them within 60 days, 90 days, or however long it takes you to drive that transformation.
Amazing. Louis, a few minutes back, you said that, it's always wise to look at, instead of looking at 20 customers for $5,000, look at five customers for $20,000.
Oh.
And most businessmen tend to say a bird is hand in is a bird in hand is more worth more than a bird in the bush.
Mhm.
What are some common challenges business owners face when they're trying to transition to your philosophy of going
Mhm.
after high-end offers?
They have never ever made that kind of money. and a
Mm,
deal. And so it's like, well, I wouldn't even know what to do when I saw the wire transfer come through, right?
mm,
I think there's also this expectation that because it is a larger investment, that it somehow is going to require more of them energetically or intellectually.
mm,
And I would say, actually, your time is more focused,
mm,
right? If you've got a roster of 5 clients, you can be far more attuned to their needs or their disengagement or wherever it is that they might be stuck versus a roster of 20 clients where you're spending far too much time on administrative tasks and
mm,
there certainly won't be enough oxygen for you to be a thoughtful collaborator or check in, through different milestones.
mm. Amazing. And what are some of the factors that business owners need to evaluate when they are creating a high-end offer? Because
Yeah.
not everyone can get a $20,000 offer so easily.
Yeah, that is actually what I was going to get into is you've got to let go of this notion of in order to have a business that generates that kind of revenue, it
Mm,
requires you to be always on or to become an influencer of sorts or anything like that.
mm,
I think that there's this attachment to like, when we think about uh, you know, that you don't need to fit everywhere or belong everywhere or appease to every type of customer.
mm,
Indeed, when we're looking at high ticket, when we're looking at larger investments, it is going to be a pond, not an ocean.
mm,
And your job is to be the big fish, right? And to step in and
mm,
be that collaborator who's thoughtful with a solution that's end to end. And
mm,
what you also have to understand is that because most other people or most other firms have their hesitation about engaging customers at that level, there's
mm.
actually less competition. Right,
Correct.
that's the counterintuitive outcome is that most
Mm,
times when I'm engaging with someone,
mm,
right, they're intrigued that I would dare to throw out a price tag of 20,000, 50,000.
mm,
But moreover, they stop and they pause and say, "Hey, Luis, no one's ever asked me that question." Or, as a matter of fact, I knew this was a problem, but it was never framed this
mm,
way, right? I always am so focused on return on investment. You help me evaluate cost of inaction. Actually, I'm bleeding cash and bleeding
mm,
time,
mm.
right? And so let's bring you in for a deeper conversation because you
Mm.
were the thoughtful person to engage me when,
Wow.
everyone thought that, I wouldn't respond because I think that's the mindset. The
Mm,
mindset is that
mm,
somehow it's going to be impossible or it's not available. But in fact, I would really home in on what we like to call is like a minimum viable audience,
mm,
right?
mm,
You only need to have 5 clients per year, which means that you only need to engage with maybe 10 prospects per month,
mm,
which means you've got to send maybe 2 or 3 proposals per month, right?
mm,
And so it's just a matter really of consistency.
mm. Thank you. When we started our conversation, you also spoke about the importance of data. When
Mhm.
we, you're talking about sales. What is the role of market research to understand high-paying customers?
Yeah. You want to size up and frame the problem. So,
Mm,
number one, am I the only firm or organization or company experiencing this? Secondly, what's the size of the entire prize? What are the trends happening across the industry? Are my competitors also facing this headwind? Right? Those are important considerations in terms of leveraging the data to paint the picture for them, but then also being able to quantify things like, well, what is the status quo? If you don't work with me and you do nothing, right? This is how much time you're losing. This is how much money you're losing. This is the impact to productivity. This is the impact to, satisfaction,
mm,
right?
mm,
That's also really important, and you can leverage the data to paint that picture. There's this current state within the context of the industry that you're in,
mm,
and the way out is the solution.
mm. Great response. How do you teach sales professionals to personalize their approach when it comes to high-paying clients? Because there
Yeah.
has to be a difference between handling 200 clients and 10 clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the important thing is anchoring on value, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as you're engaging with customers that are investing more, they are going to be less interested in features. They're going to be more focused on outcomes. It's great that you offer a 12-week coaching program that includes these tools and these modules and these things.
Mm-hmm.
What does that translate to for me as a director of an organization, or me as an individual looking for life coaching, or me as an entrepreneur hiring a consultant, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the value of said training? Well, you're going to see results in 30 days. You're going to see a 42% lift in this. You're going to experience a 15% satisfaction rate on that, etc. And when you anchor on that level of value or how it ultimately moves the needle for them in a qualitative and quantitative way, that's when you win.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What frameworks do you recommend for scaling high-end offers sustainably?
I like to crawl and then walk and then run.
Correct.
And so if you are, for example, let's follow this thread that I've introduced of an 8 week,
Yeah.
coaching program,
Yeah.
right? I would begin by closing one client. Let's find one person who is willing to pay for, a high performance coaching, executive coaching, tailored for Fortune 1000 leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would find one. I would serve that client and then at the end of that experience, assess the experience, get their feedback, survey them. Also look and take a hard look at your operational cost, time, and all the things that were involved, and then tweak the offer before you introduce it to the next customer. And then once you are in a position to really dial in how it is that you serve and how you turn things around,
Mm-hmm.
then we start to crank up your marketing and we start to get more leads in pipeline. We start to assess more of them and onboard more of them. At that point, you implement back-end systems. At that point, you also hire support so that you can increase your capacity.
And what would you say is the role of storytelling when you're actually not just composing a high-end offer, but making a
Mhm.
pitch to a high-end customer?
Yeah. Again, it comes to features versus values. So I could say to you, my 12-week coaching program includes these things. We'll
Mm,
meet once a week. You're going to get a recording of our sessions every week.
mm,
You're going to be able to Slack me if you have questions.
mm,
Great. That's good to know. That sounds aligned with the price tag, right?
mm,
But if I said to you, listen, today you told me
mm,
that you're really stuck, discouraged, and overwhelmed.
mm,
Imagine in exactly 2 weeks from now,
mm,
feeling this way, producing this thing, walking in this direction. Imagine how it's going to feel 7 weeks from now when
mm,
we're looking back at your 2 week milestone. Think
mm,
about the person you're going to become and think about week 9 when you've gone through this program, your
mm,
magnetism, the opportunities that you attract. Think
mm,
about the doors that are going to open for you. Think about your confidence. Think about the way that you show up in conversations.
mm.
What I've painted for you is, yes, there are features, but I've shown you through my storytelling what
Right.
the transformation will look and feel like throughout and after.
Mm, wow. And what do you think is the role of technology? Because now technology is omnipresent in every business, in every home. What is your perspective on how can we use technology to be able to get our high-end offers uh, accelerated?
Yeah. Lean into it. Right now, we're seeing an explosion of artificial intelligence, and
Yeah.
with it, this real concern about, oh, it's going to eliminate jobs. What's interesting is I connect with leaders all the time at Fortune 500 companies who are frustrated that because people have this fear of artificial intelligence tools, they're
Mm,
less productive. They're not really adapting for the future workforce,
mm,
right? And ultimately, they're being left behind by not leaning in.
right.
I think that that is an important consideration is that if this is the direction that the world is moving in, how
Mm,
do you apply that for the way that you move?
mm,
But without losing personalization, right? So I've just described for you things like storytelling,
yeah.
right? I also, in my sales process, introduce personalized video. So,
Mm,
yes, my emails are very perfectly written and curated and edited, but then
mm,
I'm also going to get on my mobile device. I'm going to
mm,
record a video and I'm going to say, thank you for submitting your application to my
mm,
accelerator.
mm,
I want to invite you personally to a conversation with me. This is what you're going to experience during that call. And by the end of it, we'll continue down this path. That level of personalization, me getting on camera and saying your name and taking that 1 minute
mm.
has profound effect in the way that
Correct.
people develop an affinity for your brand.
Mm. Amazing. Luis, I have time for two more questions.
As many as you
Given,
need.
given the kind of work that you're doing and your amazing 12-week coaching program, I'm asking all our viewers and listeners, if you are in sales and you want to contact Luis, please, by all means, look him up on LinkedIn and reach out to him. Luis, I wanted to ask you, what's a memorable success story from your coaching experience, and what lessons can others learn from it?
Gosh, I will never forget my very first coaching client. She is someone who had just finished her coaching certification. She was really up against the wall. She's like, I invested an enormous amount of time and financial resource into the certification. I want to start my own practice. I've got a really condensed timeline. I've got to figure this out, right?
Mm,
And so we very quickly reframed the narrative, took an audit of all her superpowers, all her credentials, and all the credibility that she brings to conversation. We helped her identify organizations in her literal backyard, in her neighborhood. There were or local communities that were in need of a life coach, and she introduced a group workshop program, literally going door to door,
wow.
and she secured her first contract.
Mm,
This was, as of the time of this recording, 7 years ago when she started this. She is today a published author of two books, a TEDx speaker. She's got an audio book. She's got other projects that are coming down the line. She's spoken on many stages. She's run workshops for Fortune 500s. I mean, I could never, and here I share this story because we both truly were just getting started in our journeys. She was just starting as a life coach. I was just starting as a revenue enablement consultant, and that was my first real sort of bet on myself. She took a huge risk because she's like, I don't have the resources to hire the fancy, $70,000 coach, so I'm starting with you.
mm,
And we ran off that cliff together. And I will never, ever forget that anxiety that she felt and the fear. I often recall her and our engagement when I'm conducting coaching sessions with other
mm,
coachees because it is really transformative, right? The kind of work that you can do when you allow it.
mm. Thank you. And my last question to you, Luis, you're also a published author. Tell me a little bit about your book.
Yeah, so my book is actually still in progress, but I have authored two LinkedIn learning courses
Hmm.
through Madecraft. It's a publisher based out here in California.
Mm,
They saw my work, and
mm,
after speaking on a few podcasts, they invited me to join their team as an author. And so, as of the time of this recording, I have authored four online courses that have been distributed on LinkedIn, Cornerstone on Demand,
mhm,
Coursera, and in the libraries of Fortune 500 companies.
mm. Amazing. And on that note, Luis, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. I think I learned some, and got some very interesting tips from you on high-end offers. We spoke about crafting a high-end offer, how to evaluate one, the role of market research. You teach sales professionals. You spoke to us about some common challenges, and you told us about storytelling. You also told us about your 12-week coaching program. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals.
You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.